Hello, can everyone hear me? Good. Okay, Kim, are you there? Hello. The session is called When Residents Stop Engaging. Um, I'm not used to using Microsoft Teams for presentations, so I apologize in advance. Can people see the slides?
Yes.
That's super. Can you see just the slides or the notes as well?
Just the slides for me.
That's super. That's super. So, shall we make a start? Because we've got a lot to go over. And I'll whiz through because I want to leave some time for questions at the end. So, I'm Nancy Radford. I'm one of the associates at ADR, and I do conflict coaching, mediation, and training. And in this session, we'll address the problem of in residents and clients not engaging with you. Now, I'm a mediator, not a magician, so I don't have a magic wand, but I've got some ideas and some resources to refer you to. So hopefully you'll find some practical use from this session. So one of the things sometimes people think about is that it's other people's fault. So someone will look at that and say, oh, that person shouldn't be shouting at them through the megaphone because they've only put their hands over their ears because she's shouting. Or you may say that they've put their hands over their ears and she's tried all sorts of things to try and get through. One of the first practical things to do is not to push so hard because it's an instinctive reaction. The more you push, people push back or shut down. So think about how hard you're pushing and maybe stepping back a little bit from the problem. But that's just a little bit of fun there. So in this session, I'm going to whiz through communication styles, understanding how communication works and what affects communication. We'll talk about checking perceptions and the stories we tell ourselves and others tell themselves, about influences on behavior, and then I'll suggest some options to try. So communication styles can vary for a lot of reasons. It might be something as simple as you speak two different languages, but it might be the type of language you speak, whether it's Oxford English or regional accents. Tone varies a lot, as does your perceived relationship. So someone can use exactly the same tone, but if you see them as someone who's trying to do you down, you'll read a different story into the tone. Phone and in person, you get the people's tone as you do on video, and video and in person communication can be body language, facial expression. With text and emails, there is so much information missing that people tend to misinterpret, particularly text, about 80 to 90% of the time, especially in heightened emotions. And then culture, in some cultures, eye contact is seen as respecting someone, and others, it's seen as a mark of disrespect. Some cultures are much more straightforward, others don't feel it's impolite to say things that the other person might not want to hear. And as well, there's a lot of variation in neurodiversity, what happens under stress. So let's just look at how much of our feelings and emotions and understanding we can actually communicate. That big purple blob is how much we feel and all these thoughts going on in our head. The green blob shows what percentage of those usually we're aware of. Sometimes we're not even aware of what we're thinking or the stories we're telling ourselves. And then of that, all that I'm aware of, there's even less that I'm willing to say or willing to talk about. And what I actually say and what the other person understands just reduce. So you can see that vast amount of things that are going on is compressed into quite a small window. So it's not surprising that even at the best of times, misunderstandings and miscommunication occur. However, this changes under stress. So we all will know about the fight or flight or freeze or flop reaction. It's an evolutionary reaction that is inbred into all of us. So when there's a threat or an actual loss, our survival mechanism kicks in and our digestive system shuts down, our thinking system shuts down, and cortisone and steroids start pumping through us, and we start seeing a very negative view of the world because that's what keeps you safe in a physically dangerous situation. So that has a big impact on communication. And let's just have a look at some of the impacts that it has. So you might find people who are much more aware of themselves and say a lot more when they're under stress. You'll find other people who completely shut down, who switch off almost all their feelings. You might find people who speak much more aggressively or not at all. So communication styles really change. And with neurodiversity, some people feel deeply but find it incredibly difficult to talk about their feelings. Other people can't stop talking. So just be aware of how much your own communication style is affected by stress and how much other people's communication styles might be by stress, by neurodiversity, by culture. So when we're more aware that other people's communication styles vary, we may also see that their picture of the world changes. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this picture. If you look at it one way, you see a young woman turning away from you. If you look at it another, you see an old woman looking down. When you have them both side by side, it's very difficult to see both pictures. Yeah. So trying to figure out what another person is seeing is quite hard. So you need to be clear about what you're seeing and do a bit of a reality check. Do I have all the facts? Is there another reason for what's happening? And then if it was a different situation or a different client, would I interpret it differently? Thinking about what's important for you, what's important for the other person, and the impact of the story that you're telling yourself. So it's easy to understand why physical things like hunger, thirst, pain, sleep, or safety can affect how well we communicate because of that evolutionary response. Sorry, there's a message in the chat. Oh, that's great. But what they've discovered since, and David Rock in his book, The Brain at Work, describes these beautifully, that there's 5 social triggers, which when there's a threat of loss or people perceive this loss or there's an actual loss, people respond in exactly the same way as if their physical safety is threatened. And those 5 he calls SCARF, and they are status, so the importance in relation to others, certainty, your ability to predict the future, autonomy, control over your own environment, relatedness, which is friend or foe, a sense of belonging or connection, and fairness, transparency, where your results reflect your actions. Now, when one of these is triggered, and some are more important to other people, for example, my husband, if he feels someone's disrespecting him, will be more upset than if I am. Whereas if I feel someone is shutting me out or excluding me, I'll feel more upset. But one of the things I'm sure you hear a lot is this sense of fairness. It's not fair that I have to do this because I'm the victim here. Yeah. So I just want you to do a little bit of an experiment here. And I want you to think of a time where you were surprised by your emotions and they maybe seemed a little bit out of proportion to what happened. And I want you to think of something between 1 and 10. If you choose a 5, so if 1 is not in the least bit bothered, and 10 is, oh my goodness, I just can't cope, choose a 5. It might be somebody stole your parking place, or you see an email come in and your heart absolutely sinks because it's from a certain person. Yeah. So if you can feel that, either your heart starting to beat or the anger rising, just pause for a minute and think, what am I saying this means? So is it, oh, they're so inconsiderate. They've stolen my favorite parking place, and yeah. Or is it, oh, now I don't know where I'm going to park. So think about what that trigger is for you. Yeah. I'll just give you a few moments to think about it. And then if you want to put in the chat maybe some of the triggers, or it might also be, for me, hunger is a big trigger. So I can feel the anger rising if my blood sugar is low. Or it might be you're tired. Right, well, I'm going to march on unless anybody has any bits they want to say there. NHS appointment matters. Yes, I got a letter, I think it was 8 weeks after I broke my arm, saying I was awaiting fixture and it had already been fixed. But what is the story you're telling yourself about the NHS appointment letters?
I had a heart attack and I had open heart surgery, and I have to attend many appointments, and I get NHS text and appointment letters all the time, and it's totally overwhelming. They're not clear what it's about, what's going to happen at the appointments, and I just get too many. So I've handled that by being more choosy about which ones I go to. I ring them up and say, what is this appointment about? Oh, it's just a chat. Well, I'm not in here for a chat. If you're going to give me treatment, then yeah, give me treatment, but I'm not coming in just for a chat. And
Okay.
yes, I agree with Lisa that some of them come after the appointment date.
So some of it's about certainty, some of it's about your autonomy, having control over what happens, do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah.
And a bit about status, that they're sort of not really respecting you. Which of those really triggers you, Sue?
Tell me them again, sorry.
So was that about that you want more control over your sort of time, or is it that you would like more certainty about what's going on?
Or certainty. They're just not clear. You'll get a text saying,
Uh-huh.
we've made an appointment for you on the 29th of August, but they don't tell you what it's about.
Yeah.
And
So
you
it's
then have to ring up and say, what appointment for what? What's it about?
yeah.
I've got many NHS officers sending me appointments, and you lose track because they
Yeah.
don't make it clear within the text what the
And
appointment is actually for.
and is it maybe a little bit of transparency and fairness that you shouldn't have to do all this?
Yeah, I shouldn't have to chase them for information.
Yeah.
It should all be in
And
the text or the appointment letter.
so it helps you see that there's quite a few things going on there, even under something that, you think, well, that's, someone else might say, oh, for goodness sake, don't worry about it. But there's so many other things that it's hitting, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
I want
you,
to go to the ones that are going to help me recover from this
yeah,
heart surgery. I'm not going to go in just for a talking shop. I want to go in for any treatment that's going to help me recover. And
and
it's just totally overwhelming. The NHS aftercare for a heart attack and heart surgery is dismal.
and
And I've been
that,
shocked by it, absolutely shocked by it.
yeah, and that teaches us some lessons about maybe how people might see our services, because they might be thinking, oh, we're giving her all this information,
Yeah,
but for you, it's overwhelming, it's not clear.
yeah,
And for them, it's just like, well, we've always been doing this. So
yeah.
this is one of the things that often, I mean, you might have just stopped engaging, thinking, oh, for goodness sake, I can't cope with this. Yeah. So
I
that's a
have.
really
Yeah.
helpful example. Thank you. Yeah. So one of the other really useful books that if you want some practical of your readers is called The Influencer. And the research team went out and they looked at various projects that succeeded where nobody else had done it. And they looked at what they'd done, how they'd done it, and they discovered,
NHS Homes. How are you this day? Good.
hello,
I'm just giving you a call. I'm just doing your. Oh, just drawing away
could
from myself. Sorry.
someone put,
I'm just doing your payment requisition form so we can pay you for the period that you stayed with family or friends. So
could,
all I need from
could you
you
mute
is the names on
yourself,
your account,
please?
the sort code and your account number.
Right. Sorry, I've just muted some people. Um, So this research looked at what it was that helped these people succeed. And one of the things was stopping reoffending. And one program had managed to reduce reoffending to very, very low. Another program had managed to get rid of a chronic disease in a certain area, endemic disease rather. And what they discovered is that most of the time people either assume it's because people don't want to do it, not that they don't know how to do it. So they discovered that when they looked at the personal motivation, the social motivation, and the structural motivation, and combined it with ability, you're much more likely to get an intervention that works. So they look at, does the person see value in changing behavior? Do other people encourage them, or do they discourage them from changing behavior? If you think of something like smoking, which is a simple thing, do the person see that there's value in changing? Well, yes, the better health, or might be because their teeth aren't stained. So it's finding what it is they actually value about changing their behavior. What do they get out of it? And then are people encouraging them to smoke, stop smoking and saying, oh, you should really give up? Or are they saying, go on, you can have just one? And then structural, are there incentives to get to giving up smoking, or consequences or rewards for giving up smoking? So for example, is it hard to smoke because they don't have a smoking area, so they don't smoke as much? In terms of, can they do it? Do they have the skills and confidence? Do they think, I can't give up smoking. I really don't know how to do it. I'll never succeed. And do others help them engage with the appropriate services? And then how easy is it to get things like nicotine patches or to find out more about it? If you understand what's getting in the way and address the right barriers, then you're much more likely to make a difference. Now, the other thing they found about these projects that succeeded is they didn't just go, we'll give them a reward for doing this. They actually attacked on at least 4 of the different areas. So looking at making change easier in personal motivation, it's about looking at why people resist or are reluctant and connect the change to something they value, and maybe provide a couple of choices because not everybody values the same thing. And in terms of social motivation, it's enlisting the help of those around them to reassure and encourage. Structural, it might be modest and intelligent rewards. It might be that they see, so if they do what you want them to do, they get an email saying, we do appreciate this, even if it's an automatic email. But also that people are clear about the consequences of what happens when they engage and what happens when they don't. And then we were talking about the ability with Sue. It's about helping people learn new skills. Do they need some confidence building? And here's where we often help with the coaching side, getting people to learn how to do it, to believe that they can do it. Mediation and coaching can help people improve their communication styles, and training staff to spot things helps. And also with the social side, training for community leaders and parents helps them influence the children's behavior, particularly around ASB. If the parents understand how to manage their children, we did some projects in an area where we were helping parents understand how kids like consistency. And then structurally, it's about assessing your communication systems and forms and the language that you use, the format. Is it easy for people to do what you want them to do? So I'm just going to pull it all together and then we'll have some questions if you have any. So it's important to review the actions and their reactions. It's so that you can understand maybe emails don't land, maybe texts work better, Maybe texts are misunderstood. Would a phone call be better? It's about relations with that person. What story am I telling myself about that person? I think they're abrupt or they're rude, but it might be they're not very good at communicating. It's also figuring out what risk there is of pushing or not, or just stepping back for a moment. Sometimes stepping back for a moment helps people engage more, but sometimes there's a big risk of doing that. So you need to really review and reflect on whether our perceptions of situations are correct. Do we need more information? And then trying a different approach, listening more and not going in with solutions, but sort of saying, so what do you think might work? What's your view? And sometimes what they suggest is not at all appropriate, but sometimes it's, sensible, or you can try that. Sometimes it's they're misunderstanding what we're asking them. And then involving relevant professionals, bring in the right people earlier rather than later. Because once people get into a sort of rut, once they're totally overwhelmed, they don't have the mental capacity. When you're really stressed, it's kind of like a toddler. If you can catch them before they go into full meltdown mode, you can change the behavior. But when people are completely shut down, sometimes there is nothing you can do but wait and try again. So I've whizzed through these. I've put the resources there of the 2 books that we've mentioned. Just open it up to any questions. Any questions? Thank you, Catherine. Any other questions, comments? Emma. Okay. No questions. I'm not sure, Emma, what's happening with the slides. Yes, the play will be on the website, Emma's saying. Great. But yeah, the influencer book is a very practical, interesting book. It's well worth reading, and it's easy reading. It's not an academic book. Okay. Yeah, and it's actually just being aware of your own strengths and experiences and just taking a breath and stepping back. That's often all you need to do. Okay, because you're all doing a great job. Thank you.